So, how do you find God? How do you know God? The reason why I'm speaking on this is I've devoted my entire adult life to this question. I'm part of a religious order. I've covenanted with other people that have committed their life to this specific question and what it means to walk it out faithfully. So what I'd like to do is share 3 principles that I've discovered that are really helpful and may help you navigate as well. How do you know God? How are you going to find Him? One, the first principle is you're going to have to seek Him with everything. We can't get God, quote, on the cheap. It's going to require us to use our entire mind, our soul, and our strength. We're going to have to apply ourselves in ways we probably are not accustomed to applying ourselves. Second, you're going to have to do everything you know to do. That's a requirement in relating to God. We cannot do things that we know are going to violate the relationship as we would in a common relationship. We can't be violating what a friend says, don't do with me. The third thing is something that's a little bit more challenging in our Western culture because we're so hyper-individualistic. It's affected our understanding of what it means to discover and know God. You have to be mentored. You have to be part of a body. Christianity is not a lone wolf religion. Knowing God is more complex than we think it is. We think that we're more capable than we actually are. In reality, we're entering into what it means to be a family. I think once you start understanding the nature of the Trinity, it makes a little bit more sense. God is triune. It's a relational picture that we're given in creation, and we're walking that out with others. And those others are the ones that can know us well enough to speak into our lives and help us to be transformed into loving people. As loving people, we have the ability to hear more clearly who God is and how He's trying to work in the world around us. So those 3 principles. 1, you got to seek Him with everything. 2, you have to do everything you know to do. 3, you have to be part of a body of fellow believers. Those are the 3, and let me unpack those for you. Okay, so the first principle, seeking Him with everything. This is what it has looked like for me. When I was at UC Davis finishing up school, I was not a Christian, but I was really curious. I'd made a lot of bad decisions, and my life was kind of going out of control. So I wanted to know, is this a summation of all things? Is it that I'm just the author and finisher of what the meaning of everything is in my life? Or is there more? Does God exist or not? I wanted to sound that out thoroughly. So I asked around and talked to people and got some answers, more questions, and it came down to, I don't really know. But there's people that are saying, no, definitively, I know that God exists. So I actually found a place in New Jersey, where I'm at now, and they had a trifold brochure for graduates at one of the resource buildings on the campus at UC Davis. So I just ran into it, and they were doing missionary work down in southern Mexico with a children's orphanage, and they didn't charge anything for this school. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to buy a ticket and go out to New Jersey, and I'm going to ask these people, how do you know God? What does it mean to know God? Why are you doing what you're doing? You know, I grew up thinking that Christianity was opiate for the masses, and an uneducated man's religion. So anyways, I came out, I had my questions, and I got answers to my questions. I saw firsthand what committed believers were doing with their lives. I saw their relationships firsthand. I saw them work through conflict. I began to understand that there was a way to have a vital relationship with God. One that I didn't have, one that I was really curious about. And 30 plus years later, I'm still on that path, but in that initial seeking process, I devoted everything to this question, and I was able to get that question answered. I think that is what the scriptures are talking about when it says you have to seek him with everything. It may mean going across the country to a bunch of people you don't know, to do things you're unfamiliar with, and ask some awkward questions. That's what part of the thrill of finding God is. He wants us to pursue after him in a way that we think too poorly of, but it is really an exciting adventure, and it's been an exciting adventure from day one. So that's the first principle. What does that mean for you? It's going to be something different than what it was for me. We actually use a quote that is really helpful in our spiritual direction meetings that help guide us, and it's by D.T. Niles. He was a Sri Lankan theologian, and the quote that he has that we use, he says, Christians are one beggar, or Christianity is one beggar telling another beggar where he found bread. In other words, I'm just saying, this is how I found God. I'm not telling you this is how you will find God, but this is how I have found God. Because we're talking about a relationship. Now, the reality is there are certain principles, and this is where we get into like the 10 Commandments. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't be an adulterer, don't be a fornicator. Those kind of things, right? We know the 10 Commandments. The first, we cannot be violating how God says he wants to be related to. And he says, don't relate to other people this other way. We can't violate that. If we want to find God and know God, we have to respect how he says the universe works. Not how we think it and not how we want it, but what he says. This is where the scriptural references that you've probably heard, fear God is the beginning of wisdom. There's a certain element where we don't sufficiently fear God, and therefore we violate just the nature of all relationships, the nature of how the universe works. When I think back to what it means to follow the 10 Commandments, there's also this other element. We need to do what we know to do. There's a relational element which is particular to the individual. For me, because of my background and where I was coming from, one of the things that the Lord was speaking to me about as a young man was that I needed to stop listening to a lot of the things that I was listening to before I began my relationship with him. That looked like I really shouldn't be listening to Led Zeppelin and Cream and all those kind of music, although, you know, fine, whatever, that may be something that you can do, and I couldn't. It was not helpful. The messages in the music, just the spirit of the music itself, was not edifying to my soul and what I needed. I needed to obey that leading, my conscience. There are certain things that the Lord is speaking to you about. What is he saying to you to build the warmth in your relationship? This is where we need to respond and say, yes, I'm going to do that thing that you're speaking to me. I'm aware that you're speaking to me on this. I may not necessarily like the very first things that you're saying, but if I want to have a relationship, if I want to hear more from you, I need to do the thing that you're telling me to do today. Not tomorrow, but today. It's kind of common sense. If you have a friend that says, hey, I want you to do this when you interact with me, and if you decide to do the opposite, you can't have a warm relationship. It's just common sense. The same is true in our seeking after God. The same principle applies. If he tells us to do something, we're obligated to do it if we want to have a relationship. If you don't want to have a relationship, that's where free will comes in. So the third thing that really came to me was you need to be part of a body. I didn't really understand that at all for quite some time. It was a little bit more complex and challenging for me, and it may be because of who I'm in particular. But I think it's a native problem to the Western mindset. Well, we've been infected with the sense of the Enlightenment in that we are self-made men. We have the capacity to do all these things. And we can kind of fool ourselves into thinking that we don't really need others. So we say that the nature of the universe is that we don't really need people. We're not social beings in fabric, but we are. We can be lone wolves, and we can be lone wolves when it comes to knowing and walking with God. The scriptures speak to something different, and I think if we look at our understanding of a triune God, it kind of speaks to the nature of who God is, and if we're made in His image, it speaks to the nature of what our relationships should look like and what it means when Christ says, I am having you enter into the family of Christ, the body of Christ. The challenge that I faced was I had some capabilities, I had some talents, I thought they were going to be sufficient and I could figure things out on my own. That's just not true. When people would speak to me, I'd have a hard time hearing certain truths. I'd have a hard time even understanding what they were saying. I remember one of the early lessons, this is really early on, the pastor was speaking about the concept of what principles were. And I had never read Covey. I wasn't very familiar with even his name. But when he was speaking about principles, I didn't really get it. Because I was more of a person that thought of truth as relative. I didn't think that there were, northern stars that I could be guided by in a variety of settings and regain calibration in the proper sense of the word. When I began to understand that principles worked in all my relationships, there were certain ways of being that would just violate, but certain ways of being that my relationships would flourish. That was like a revelation to me. So that was one thing where it was outside input that helped me. So there's some mentorship happening there. But that mentorship needed to be fleshed out in particulars. And this is where the kind of rubber starts hitting the road when we're in trying to walk these things out. Unless people really know us really well, it's really hard for somebody to speak into our lives and for it to have purchase. Christianity isn't about Sundays and Bible studies. It's about an entire life transformation. If an entire life transformation is really required, it can't be done on occasion. I'll give you a particular conversation I had a few months ago. I'm the steward of our community business, and I was in a Zoom call with other business owners, and the Zoom call happened to be with other Christian business owners, and we were having this conversation about what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be in the body of Christ. And they were saying, yeah, I don't really understand that. Well, we don't really do that. We don't even have membership in our churches. They said, it's really more like we're a club, because I can come and I can go, and I can change to a different church, and even the pastor changes around every 5 years, in the various models they were talking about. They said, we don't have what I was talking about. They didn't have this integrated life where people knew them and were committed with the ability to speak in repeatedly over a long period of time, both into their lives for encouragement, but also correction, and nor did they have the ability to do that for others. So they were saying, yeah, we're struggling because we don't have that vitality, and we know that it's not as the scriptures say, and they suffer because of it. That's not the ideal that God is after, and I think there's examples throughout history and modern examples of the necessity for and the ability to walk out a committed relationship within a body of believers. We need that body of believers because what we're trying to do is be transformed into the image of Christ. being transformed in the image of Christ is something that we sometimes want to do, and there's sometimes things that we're challenged by because we just don't think correctly, and we have habit patterns that make it really a long process. And we have to have people that are going to long suffer with us and stick with us so that we finally do break through and have that victory. If we don't have those vital relationships, halfway through, we're going to bail, or they're going to bail. They're going to go to a different church, whatever the case is. But we need these three principles. We have to seek Him with everything. We have to do everything we know to do, and that's both in the principle level and in the particular in a relationship. 3, we need to be a part of a body and have those mentors that have the ability to help us. And it's not even an option, it's a necessity. If these things are things that you're struggling with or wanting help with, click below. I'll put in a link for the schools that we have as part of the religious order, and hopefully some of those resources can help you as well. And thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.